Greetings, friends. Today we are going to talk about the Barbarian in our continuing feature of, just exploring classes and learning how to be a little bit better with them. So, without further ado, Atalo, roll the intro and let's get into it. The Barbarian is honestly one of my favorite classes. Always has been. All the way back from, 3rd edition, Barbarians were kind of meh. They were cool concept, but really the game mechanics did not deliver. D&D 4th edition, Barbarians were amazing. You felt like a Barbarian. But it was an edition not very well received. Even the Pathfinder 1e Barbarian was a little, they did okay, but they're still not the greatest. Pathfinder 2e, I think, is a awesome rendition of a Barbarian. You really get that feel. You deal large amounts of damage. You have ability to move things around the battlefield. And also, you're getting hit a lot. And that's, part of the things we're going to cover today is the Barbarian's abilities. You need to plan on going to get hit. But it goes in with the fact that, they get 12 hit points per level. And you get the con and your ancestral hit points. They are a massive hit point class. And they need it. And they get crit a lot. They get hit all the time, as I've said. So those hit points are going to go fast. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's cover a little bit about what is the Barbarian. Now, as everyone knows, the Barbarian is your classic Conan-like character. Big, beefy, just beats the hell out of things, and then, it can dish it out and take it, as it were. So there are a couple of options for this. When you pick a Barbarian, you have a few different what are called instincts. The core mechanic of the Barbarian is their ability to rage. When they rage, their armor class goes lower, they gain temporary hit points, and they deal extra damage. And depending on what Barbarian instinct you choose, kind of dictates how much of this extra damage you're going to deal. The first instinct on our list is the animal instinct. This is kind of an interesting one. It is anathema for them to use weapons while they are in their rage. However, they gain natural attacks. There is a large list of animals, and depending on which one you gain extra abilities, trip, grapple, things like this with your natural attacks. Almost all of them, I believe, have an option where they start at 10, or 1d10 is the damage, and then as you get more levels, this 1d10 is going to bump to 1d12. So they do get pretty much always the highest damage die available. Animal Instincts actually kind of have the best options for armor class. Now, that is not to say they have a great armor class. Just amongst all the Barbarians, they have a few abilities that let them get it just a little higher than the others, so they do have that going for them. But by no means do I think any of the Barbarian instincts are really that. They're not bad. Some of them are incredibly situational, though, so I don't know how viable it is to base a character on that unless your campaign is going to focus on this. And then absolutely, yes. But I would say for the most part, people focus on 3 or 4 of the classic instincts of the Pathfinder Barbarian. So animal instinct, you get abilities to kind of change into the animals as you get higher level. So they're really cool and they are a lot of fun. If you kind of want this character that, can sort of start turning into a bear or an owlbear as they are raging and get this really high fantasy feel, the animal instinct is definitely the way you are going to want to go. Next on our list, we have the dragon instinct. Somewhat similar to the animal instinct. This is based off different types of dragons. At the moment, it's the chromatic or metallic dragons. So they gain, some resistance to that type of energy and a couple of draconic abilities. But for the most part, they're a very solid option. They gain, a little more. They gain a little extra damage when they rage, as does the animal instinct. That is pretty comparable. It's going to put you definitely amongst the higher of the damage dealers. Unfortunately, their hit is similar to all the melee characters with the exception of the fighter, which is a little higher. So your crits are still going to range in that you have to roll probably 18, 19, or 20 to get into the crits most of the time, unless you're fighting something much weaker than yourself. And even then, you're still going to see 19 or even 20 often needed to actually achieve that crit. So you can take some abilities that, you want to make sure you're aware of your flanking. You want to maybe check out intimidation. One thing I will say, a barbarian cannot use intimidation while they are raging. While they are raging, they cannot use things that have mental traits, concentration, which intimidation does. However, there is a feat they can take, and it is a first level feat called Raging Intimidate. This allows you to use Intimidate as a barbarian while you're raging. So if you want to focus on raging, you absolutely are going to want to take that feat. It is going to be very important for you. As we are getting down our list of different barbarian instincts, next we have the Fury instinct. This is kind of like the core instinct. Like, I think this is where they figure, this is just supposed to be what most barbarians are. Just you get mad and you destroy stuff. It's also kind of one of the most lackluster. You get an extra feat at first level, and other than that, you don't really get any extra damage. I believe it's the only one that doesn't. Your rage is just the standard +2, and the other different instincts give you extra on top of that, but not the Fury Barbarian. I'm not sure if the feat makes up for that or not. And as you gain higher levels, you do gain extra damage like all other barbarians as well. So there's a little bit of leeway in there, but I do kind of feel it is the most, it's the least interesting of all the barbarians, to be honest. It's not bad. Again, I don't feel any of them are bad, but I honestly don't really see it used that often. The one I do see used the most often is the Giant Instinct. And this is one, you wield a massive oversized weapon and you get a huge damage boost on top of it. At first level, you are able to get a +10 to damage while you are raging. So you deal your weapon damage +10. This is monstrous. You are able to chew through enemies so quickly. This does not come without a drawback though, and that is they have the lowest armor class of any kind of barbarian, which means they get crit all the time. I mean, honestly, I've played numerous games with them, and I would say they get crit at least every other round, if not every round. It is insanely common. You really need a character that is in the group that has very good healing abilities if you are going to stay on top of things as a Giant Instinct barbarian. They do gain some interesting abilities though to get larger and things like that, so we'll cover that in a minute in strategies for the barbarian. But very cool barbarian, probably my favorite, honestly, because that's what you think of in terms of actual game mechanics. Barbarian, you want something that can kill enemies fast and move on to the next one. I think the Giant Instinct probably is the best at that, but again, it has a heavy price. After that, we have the Spirit Instinct. These are barbarians that actually are able to go after undead and more with a focus on ghosts. They gain a little bit of extra damage, and they also gain Ghost Touch so that they can affect incorporeal creatures. But as we were talking about, this is incredibly situational. It's not like you're fighting incorporeal creatures all the time. So unless you have a campaign really geared towards that, it's a little lackluster. Your bonus damage type is negative or positive, so you get to kind of choose. So if you're fighting a living thing or an undead thing, you can do that. This does have a drawback though of constructs, which do not take damage from either negative or positive damage. So that's going to be a little bit of an interesting one. So that one's definitely one with a grain of salt. I would probably say it is my least favorite. Not to say I'd never play one, depending on campaigns, and there are certainly Paizo adventure paths that this type of instinct would shine. But I would say in regular gameplay, that's going to be very uncommon. And last was an instinct that was introduced in the Advanced Player's Guide, and that is the Superstitious Instinct. And this has to do with you don't like magic. You gain bonuses against magic, and that's kind of the entire thing of the Superstitious Barbarian. It's a decent option. It has a few interesting selections as you level up. And again, I'm not making these videos to tell you how to build your character. I really want to just give you my suggestions as someone who's been playing these games for a long time that can help you maximize what it is you have decided to do. So all these videos, we're basically going to give you the options, my thoughts about them, and then some really cool options and abilities that you can try to capitalize on. Speaking of that, if you do like this video and like our other videos, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Tell people about it. If you see people asking questions and that, direct them here. All the exposure we can get is great and crazy helpful. And the more people get involved, the more I will be able to do this as I can allocate more time to it. So I really appreciate all of you that have subscribed. It means the world to me. So let's try and keep it going if we can. So the biggest thing I see with the Barbarian is you get in there, you rush up, you start making your attacks, but when you are done, a Barbarian can often find themselves, next to an enemy or even two enemies. You want to avoid being next to two enemies at all possibilities because of all the character classes, or at least all the melee classes. I feel the Barbarian is the most at risk from getting hit from a third attack from an enemy. That -10 to the enemy's attack for their third map, their multiple attack penalty, still sees the Barbarian get hit a lot. That hit's usually not critting, but it is hitting. And I cannot tell you how many times I've seen like a crit and then a hit and then a hit on a Barbarian. And that is devastating to their hit points. Yes, they have a lot, but it is not infinite. So anything you can do to eat up the enemy's actions and making them get to you is incredibly important. I highly recommend reach weapons with Barbarians because for the most part, that allows you to attack without being next to them. So especially if it's a creature of your size that doesn't have reach, they have to move up to you and later you can take attack of opportunity. That will allow you to get an attack of opportunity on them. And depending on which Barbarian you are, that is a potential of anywhere between a lot of damage and a huge amount of damage. So incredibly important. Personally, I love reach weapons for them, but even without doing that, sometimes you'll want to get up to an enemy, attack, and then back away, even if it's just a step, because if they have to move up to you, that is one less action. And as I've said, they're the most at risk for all the melee characters of getting hit with that third action. I know a lot of times people think, oh, third action, and if it's an attack, I'm not going to worry about it. I cannot stress to you, as a player of a Barbarian, you do have to worry about it. And anything you can do is great. The knockdown tree for the Barbarian, freaking fantastic, because if you can hit an enemy, knock them down, and you have reach, that means that enemy had to get up, it had to move next to you, and then it only gets one attack. So yes, that attack's most likely going to hit, probably even be a crit, but that's still two other attacks that are not getting to you. So this is monstrous. Not to mention, when they get up, they incur attack of opportunity. So if you've taken attack of opportunity, you now have that again. You have that ability to deal a lot more damage to them. So incredibly important. There are a couple of feats that, help you as you level up in Barbarians. They gain a little bit of damage reduction, I believe starting at 5th level. So, and each different instinct has different types of damage reduction, generally geared towards physical damage. It's not a huge amount. It's equal to your Constitution modifier, but it is surprising how much that helps. Because like I said, if you get hit 3 times in a round, your Constitution modifier is 3. Or by that level, it's probably even 3 or 4. That's 9 to 12 damage that you resisted from that attack, which is really helpful. It can mean the difference of actually going down versus, oh, I'm just really low. I highly recommend that you work with your party if you're a Barbarian and figure out who is going to try to help keep you up, because you're going to need it. You can always do things like healer's gloves, potions, but these things all take actions. So it's your best advantage. You are the damage dealer. You are a pivotal damage dealer. So if you are not attacking, you're not doing your job. And if the barbarian is forced to kind of back out and heal, and the other members of the group are not helping to facilitate that healing to keep them in the fight, it is detrimental to the entire group, not just the barbarian, because the faster you bring down enemies, the faster a fight ends. You know, if you are 4 characters and 4 enemies, the first group that can drop one of the combatants, they have an immense advantage. So I always recommend to people try to focus on a single enemy to get them down as fast as possible. And if you have a barbarian on your team, it's easy to do that. There are almost every spellcasting class has options to increase attacks. Very, very useful to use on the barbarian. Every little plus helps, because if you can get that crit on the barbarian, even at low levels, barbarians crit for 40, 50 damage. And once they start getting levels, 7, 8, 9, that crit damage starts getting up into like 100. It is massive and incredibly valuable to your team. So any little thing you can do to help capitalize on that, incredibly important. There are a host of barbarian feats, and so many of them are fantastic. It is difficult to pick every level, like, ooh, do I want that one? Do I want this one? I love them, and again, this is just going to be your flavor and your style that you like to play. And I don't think there's really a bad option to go. The biggest thing is looking at your weaknesses, and that is your low armor class. So make sure you try to fix that as fast as possible. Anything you can do to help get your armor class up, buying magic armor, things like that. Incredibly helpful for your team, for them to help get your armor class up, or help heal you, or help keep enemies. Especially, like I said, if you ever reach weapon, if a fighter can get in front of you, or a champion, so that the enemy has to get through them to get to you, and you can still attack from behind them, you are going to be devastating the enemies, and incredibly fun, incredibly useful. So I think barbarians are awesome. I think they honestly are one of the most solid classes. I'm not going to say the strongest classes, because again, they did such a good job with balance that almost any class, if you truly love a class, you're probably gonna be like, oh my God, this is one of the best classes because I can do this and I can do that. And other people are going to say the same thing about their class. But when everyone says that, and to them it's true, it's a testament to the balance of a system, because there isn't this huge disparity between them that other people are like, oh no, they're right and they're wrong. They're like, no, you both have really good points. You both can get in there and do what needs to be done. So I hope you guys enjoyed my take on the Barbarian. And when you are playing them, you just need to give some thought as to your positioning. It is so important. You've got to make sure you are creating buffer spaces between you and the enemies, and standing to the left or the right of the enemy, and there's another enemy that can get up close to you, or you are adjacent to them type of thing. That can mean the difference between life and death for a barbarian. So again, just be aware of your surroundings, keep an eye out, and watch for what's going on. And make sure you're reading all of the stats and everything that you get. I know sometimes, like, I've seen people say, oh, barbarians can't look for invisible things because Seek has the concentration trait. Well, when you read Rage, the very last sentence says you can perform Seek action while you are raging. So it is a exception to that rule. So just make sure you're always reading everything, because sometimes they will say things but then add specifics that overwrite that. So hope you guys have enjoyed this. If you have, please like and subscribe. Tell friends. If you didn't, you know what? Leave it in the comments. Tell me what you didn't like about it. And we're going to keep moving along through our list of classes. There are a lot of them. Next is the Bard. So as always, game well, my friends.